Before Black Panther, before the adaptation of The Little Mermaid, there was Cool Runnings, the story of the first ever Jamaican bobsled team. The film was released in 1993 and would push the careers of Leon, Raul D. Lewis, Malik Yoba, late actor John Candy, and my guest today, Dougie Doug. Doug joins us to celebrate 30 years since the film's release, and he would open up about a few unknown facts about the film and would even reveal how the industry still fails to celebrate this global classic. I hope you enjoy. Mr. Dougie Doug, thank you so much for joining us. We're celebrating 30 years of Cool Running, so I'm so excited to have you. First and foremost, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Symphony. I'm really good. And I'm good that I'm sitting down with you, the sister with good energy. I mean, come on, let's do it.
No, I'm happy and honored to be here with you. Now, I want to take it back a little bit and talk about your career and then just kind of work our way up to Cool Runnings. Now, you started doing stand-up comedy at the age of 17. How was that experience for you as a stand-up comedian?
It was exhilarating because it was such a great time uh, in terms of black comedy was concerned. It was pre-Def Jam, so there was a lot of people who were really influenced by Eddie Murphy primarily, and because he was a young comic. 'Cause prior to that, there was like sort of supper club and cocktail comedy and nightclub comedy where older guys would get up in tuxedos or whatever. So when Eddie came out, I was like, oh my God, he's like 18, like we can do it too. So the industry became, once he blew, the industry was very, they were open to and looking for young black comics because they were looking for the next Eddie Murphy because he couldn't get all the money. That's how that works. I mean, he busy. Let's find somebody else. So we all tried to come in there and try to get something happening. So it was so exciting. It was so exciting, and everybody had individual personalities, and they were, many of the top comics today are essentially from that era. And we all were, a lot of us were, friends with each other and hung out with each other, and obviously competitors, of course. But it was great.
Yeah, and when I think about like those times back then, like every time I see like old clips and things, like what a time to be alive. Like I wish I could have experienced that because it just felt so different. Being that you've been a part of that culture before, before the times, and then now we have stand-up comedy today. Seeing that transition, what do you think of the state of, the stand-up comedy community today?
I think it's great, and I enjoy a lot of the younger brothers out there. I think comedy's in good shape. I think that there's definitely a lot of landmines now that weren't that weren't around back then. so people have to be a lot more clever in terms of the way they do their thing. But but people are really, they're finding a way, and audiences are supporting comedy quite a bit. There's platforms like this that didn't exist before to market and to discuss comics, and so it's a different world for sure. I remember when we came around, when I first came around, there was only one black platform where you can get a national audience, and that was the Apollo. That was Def Jam. So it's like the Showtime at the Apollo. If you want, I was on Showtime at Apollo, and I was like famous immediately. Like it was just like, because like it was like one of the only venues where you could get a national audience like right away, other than obviously the national talk shows like Johnny Carson at that time, which was relatively off limits to black comics. And cable started coming through, and then there was these sort of comedy nights, and of course specials were special back then because hardly anybody got them. So yeah, so it's great now that there's so many venues and people can be independent and communicate their voice. And young comics send me clips all the time to let me see, like, yo, check my stuff out, tell me what you think, blah blah blah. So it's really cool that they can now have a mechanism to promote themselves, and so I love it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Are there any comedians that you came up with that you still keep in contact with today that maybe we know of? Today, maybe notable comedians or whoever maybe that you came up with?
Wow. That I keep in touch with. I don't keep in touch with much of anybody these days.
You are off grid.
I'm an old fart, Symphony. Uh, but I came up with I talked to Flex quite a bit. He's a good buddy, and we started together. He tried to hit on my girlfriend before he was a comedian. He tried to hit on my girlfriend. He's like, "Oh God, you're that guy from the Apollo," And so I'm interested in comedy. So get him away from my girlfriend. I brought him to the club, so, and he ended up doing well. So having a couple of television shows of his own, excuse moi. So yeah, Tracy Morgan I came up with. JB Smooth's a friend of mine, I came up with. So a lot of great guys, from that period, all
Yeah.
from the same club, by the way, the Uptown Comedy Club in Harlem. So we all started there, and it was great. You know.
Now, I wouldn't call you an old fart at all.
Thank you,
Um,
thank you.
but you've made your mark for sure. And in one of those roles where, of course I can't help but bring up Mo Better Blues that was directed by Spike Lee. How did you end up getting into that role? How did that role come about?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. 'Cause a lot of people don't mention that's where that's why my first movie. Um, I met Spike at the Apollo. He saw my act. It was a great night of great comics, Paul Mooney and Robin Harris, and we were all on the same bill. It was just great. And I just happened to be on that bill, and so Spike came up to me afterwards, was like, "Do you got a SAG card?" So I was like, I lied. I was like, yeah, sure, sure. So he called me and asked me to come down to the set to really just warm up the audience because they had a jazz club scene. So to warm up the audience for Robin, who was in the movie as Butter Bean or whatever. So um, so he would come on and actually do his act on camera. But I stayed there for 2 weeks, and I was basically an extra, and I did what I think a lot of young people should do, which is I went up to him and said, "Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it." But he's like, "No, you're gonna be in this movie. I'm gonna give you lines in this movie." So so the last shot of the last day of the shoot, he set up the camera and he had me come in the bathroom and he says, "I just say something to me." So that's what ended up being my film debut. So.
Yeah, man. Yeah, big shout out to Spike Lee. Now, you also mentioned Robin Harris. This would be his final acting role. Did you ever like have a conversation with Robin? And if so, do you remember what that conversation was like or what that relationship was like?
Oh yes, I loved Robin. He was a good guy. We had the same agent.
Wow.
Who, and he told me, Robin is threatened by you. I'm like, are you crazy? You kidding? So I did not know this, and that's according to the agent. But I think he thought I was just a formidable up and coming young guy, and obviously he was very well established But he was always very kind to me. He never said, get away from me. There were some other comics who like Paul Mooney was hilarious. Like when I opened up for Paul Mooney, he came into the dressing room, was like, "Which one of y'all niggas is gonna give me some a fifth of vodka from the?"
That's Paul Mooney for sure.
Yeah, exactly. But but it was cool. He was very nice. He was a very wonderful guy. God rest his
Yeah,
soul.
no. Yeah, that literally sound. Obviously, I never had the opportunity to meet Paul Mooney, but even hearing stories and seeing the clips, that sounds exactly like what I've seen and what I've heard. So,
Imagine going to your opening acts like, okay, which one of y'all niggas is going to the store to give me a fifth of vodka? Come on now.
what a time! What a time! Now throughout your career, and like I said, I want to eventually get up to Cool Runnings, but even looking at different movie roles, were there any movie roles that you turned down that looking back maybe you regret it or wish like you would have taken on?
Yeah, I mean, after Cool Runnings, I got a lot of offers to do a lot of different things. There's one movie that I never see on TV. It was a Universal movie. It was called Stinkers. Come on. So, so, but not now. I would have liked that money.
Like run it.
I was like, first of all, this movie is so bad, it was never to be seen again. It wasn't going to be a blemish on my record. When you're young, you're like, I have, come on, I'm doing well and I don't need this blah, 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 bullshit. Take the money, Bob. Take the money. Young folks, take the money. So I missed that. I missed the Stinkers money. I've never seen it on cable or anything. I'm like, this could have been like, some for a
Right.
trust fund. It's like,
Could have got the money and then it never happened anyway.
yeah, nobody would have cared. I did,
Oh,
I did
now
turn down I did turn down one thing that I do regret though. It was to guest host Soul Train, and so I did turn that down, unfortunately.
What made you turn it down at that time?
I was scared because Don Cornelius, I guess he saw me and said, "Oh, no, that's a very intelligent young man." It was like, I mean, like anything he said was just like, cool, So I was just like, wow, I don't think I want to come behind Don Cornelius, because he was uncomfortable with hip hop, so he got tired of interviewing rap artists and being like, uh, "Where's your mama? And why don't you have manners?" Like
Right, right. A different energy.
different era too. Yeah, so he was trying to get a young person to take the show over, and eventually Shamar Moore became the host. But God bless him. But yeah, I was scared. I was like, I can't. It was a legendary show. I messed it up. So anyway, that's why I said no.
Well, speaking of legendary, I mean, like I said, we're 30 years out from Cool Runnings. First of all, congratulations to you. I don't know if there's been any celebrations. Have y'all received any celebrations? Because this year is also, speaking of hip hop, 50 years of hip hop, and we've been seeing. Speaking of runnings, those run through. I personally haven't seen anything with Cool Runnings. Have there been any celebrations for you all?
No, I mean the only thing that we did a show for Fashion Week. This brand called Fashion Actively Black, which I'm wearing the shirt. It's like it's a cool running shirt from the collection. So anyway, we did a runway show for Fashion Week, which was fantastic. Well, it was only me and Malik Yoba, but I shouldn't say only because we're enough. I swear we're enough. But so that was great, and we're going to do Rhode Island Comic Con, November 3rd to the 5th, and so we're just trying to do things independently to commemorate the time and pick up a couple of chips along the way. But so I'm not I'm not in it for props. I'm in it for property. So
Right. I do find it interesting because I do think, and first let me do say, I do think you and Malik Yoba are enough for sure. So I definitely touch an agreement with you there. I do think you deserve more of a celebration. Why do you think that is that we haven't seen more, in Actively Black, shout out to them. I'm very aware of that brand and I love them for being able to collaborate with you all. So not saying that that is not enough or that's nothing. But when we talk about, Disney and knowing where Cool Runnings and what Cool Runnings is tied to, you would think, that there's something done. Why do you think we haven't seen anything done?
they Disney has a very interesting relationship with this project. From the initial inception of it, they were always very down on it. They were not, believing that it was going to be a big hit. They were actually trying to make it like a direct-to-video movie, and they were just like lukewarm about it. The big movie that year was supposed to be. It was released a month later, which was Sister Act 2. They had all their energy into Sister Act 2, and so we were just like, oh, we'll release that it was in October, and it'll be done with, and we'll make a couple dollars, blah, blah, blah. So they didn't know that it was going to have the legs that it had. I don't think that they own it 100%. I think that's part of the reason why they don't get behind marketing it and why we didn't have a sequel and da 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 da. I tried to do it many years ago, and the producer was very bitter because of the way she was treated. I mean, this is a whole behind the scenes thing. But I don't. The short answer is I don't think they own it 100%. That's Disney being what they are, wanting to own everything. They released a pop thing. What is it called? One of those pop things of me.
Oh, like the bobblehead thing.
Yeah, a Bible thing of me. But they were like, didn't tell me. So that's how Disney is. And I still have it, and I charge people to sign it, so it's cool. But other than that, it's like Disney called me. But so I don't think they. Yeah, they're very greedy. Basically, they're greedy. I'm not
Yeah.
afraid to say they're greedy. If they were
No,
to get us
yeah.
to come, they would get us to come
No,
together. They'd have to pay something. They have to pony up. They had
yeah,
us
but
come together, right?
Oh, sorry. No, I was going to say, I do think where the culture is, like, we would want to see that because when you look at even, and I know this is bobsledding, but even coming from track, when we look at Sha'Carri and like things that are happening within just sports in general, Olympic sports in general, you have black people stepping into these spaces, even when we're talking about men's and women. So it's like, it just makes so much sense because it's something that the culture, like, I would love to see a sequel.
Yeah, you know, what's interesting is we have all this impact and all this inroads that we're making, but we're not making them in places and spaces where people like you could say, "Listen, you guys got to do this because there's a big audience out there." And in this case of this film, I mean, it's a global audience. I mean, all of the guys will tell you, like, we've all been traveling all over the world for 30 years, and there probably isn't a place in the world that we haven't touched, either individually or collectively. Sometimes we've gone together, and so the movie has had an impact that has been pretty lasting and definitely global. And so, yeah, I don't think they just don't know what to do with it. They're also preoccupied with the strike because they're the major OTT streaming force in the world. You know, ESPN Plus and Disney Plus, and they own all these platforms, so they're under fire. And so this was a bad year for a reunion, basically, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It just, like I said, it just makes too much sense. Excuse me. Even when we think about like Black Panther, right now, Black Panther, that became big. That became our hero. But before Black Panther, there was Cool Runnings that was telling a story that some people had never seen or people have talked about, but to be able to see it on that platform, and then now these conversations are happening more and more. So, cool. I get it. This year is kind of crazy for them, but to me personally, it's an excuse. And as you said, like sometimes just being a little too greedy never gets where you need to be. But yeah,
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. Well, thank you for mentioning that, and also thank you for putting us in the same league as Black Panther, because I've heard that before, and I've always been very flattered by it. But I was like, oh wow, yeah. But it's true. We really you know tried very hard, and there's a long story about how hard we tried to make sure that the representation was the way it should be, and so forth. And I'm surprised that we left that situation with sanity, because there was so much pushback, so much ignorance, so much uh, well-meaning liberalism behind, behind, you know, oh, just do what we say, and but they had no idea what they were in for with a guy like Malik and myself and Leon and Ro. They didn't know what they were in for. That we were going to be very, we staged protests, set, we did all kinds of things to make sure that it was, what it was. You know, we didn't have a Ryan Coogler behind us back then, God bless him, to be in a position of power to be able to install some of these images from the front end. We had to do it from the back end. Like, look, man, I ain't doing that, and I ain't wearing no dress, and I ain't doing, which they were like tense about it, like, it's like, dude, we're just having a conversation. I mean, now in this culture, we're now primed to have those conversations, which I think is beautiful. And I always tell my daughter, who's in her 20s, like, y'all are formidable. And I'm very happy to see you guys, leaning into yourselves, into your authenticity. And because when we tried to lean, they leaned back on us.
No, well, thank you for the work that you all have done, because there's also a couple of things that I've seen also that I want to clear up in this conversation while we're here. Just about it, because there were rumors about Disney complaining about like the Jamaican accents were too difficult to understand, and they were looking for something along the lines of like the Sebastian the Crab from The Little Mermaid. Is there any truth to that? And for you, I know you said you were having those conversations, but was it offensive to hear, something like that from them, if it was true?
It was true. Yes, they gave us all different things that we should sound like. I forget who was Sebastian the Crab. I think that they might. Oh no, that was a general note, Sebastian the Crab. Maybe if you guys could sound more like Sebastian the Crab, which sounds absurd and ridiculous then and now. Yeah, it wasn't even offensive. It was just kind of like, are you kidding me? Like, is this are you serious, or is this like, are you stupid? Like basically. So and obviously they don't, nobody wants to, for a young upstart in the industry that they think they're giving a chance to tell you that, are you stupid? You know, is this character developmentally disabled? Like, what are you talking about? So it was rough because it was true, but it was rough because um, we had to find a way to come up with a happy medium, and it stalled the production for a little while, um, because the director basically told us, I'm going to be fired if you guys don't come up with something, or if you don't appease. Which I don't think anybody. And I found it interesting when they told us that we all sat down, just kind of intuitively, just talk about black faces in white spaces. We all kind of sat back and we all kind of looked at each other, you know, as brothers
Yeah.
can do sometimes when we end up realizing that we're about to feel the fire. And it was interesting because we kind of like said, hey, you want to have lunch or something? So it's almost like we all went and had lunch, and it was like a private meeting. Nobody mentioned, hey, is it just me or are we up against it? Um, so I got a chance to test their metal, like black faces and white spaces. And you get to see who you smell each other's breath and to see who's willing to fight and who's willing not to. And we all realized everybody was willing to take some hits.
Wow.
And we all said, you know what? Let them say what they're going to say. We're going to do what we're going to do. So but that's why we're brothers for life. That's just the
Yeah.
fact. We're brothers for life because we've been through things like that. Things that are on the micro level, on the macro level, black folks have to deal with on a regular basis in terms of supremacy. And so, but we rose to the occasion. That's why we're all like in love with each other. We fight, we disagree, we don't like each other. Like we're family. And we all know it too. Even
Yeah.
Leon.
I the strength and courage for you all to do something like that, to say like, hey, let's all get together to make sure that we're on one page. That culture in itself is something that I hope and pray that like it's continued to be passed on, because even in these times of me being in the industry, like I think we do need more of that, of coming together on the back end to say, hey, okay, no matter what's being said, this is what's going to be done. So you all have laid the blueprint, and I think too that's why sometimes, or not even sometimes, why there's a little bit of hesitation or maybe fear of like, oh, we don't want to, celebrate this, because then that's going to put it out to the masses that these group of black men came together to say, hey, this is what, we're going to do regardless of what's being said. Now, I want to, yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
And we happen to be unapologetic about telling the story as it was, and that is also concerning to them. But it's okay.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you so much. Now, I want to keep going through these true and false. I guess I'm going to call this the true or false segment. The next one, was it true that the film ran out of money?
No, that's not true. Did not run out of money.
Okay, because yeah, I think the saying was it was like different media companies were trying to like step in to fill the void and things like that. But thank you for clearing that one up. All right, next one. Oh, this is one of my favorites that I'm definitely dying to know. I'm a big Tupac fan. Was it true that Tupac was supposed to be in the film?
He auditioned for the film. I don't know how far he got, or I mean, the list of people that auditioned for this movie and that wanted to be in this movie is incredible.
Okay.
It's a who's who of black iconic people. I'm like, and I feel a little like, wow, really? Like, and y'all picked me? Like, I'm like,
They picked the right one.
I'm a lover of my people. You know what I mean? And when you love your people, you love your people. It's like, look, I mean, I'm not gonna put myself above, certain brothers. Like, oh wow, that's great. It's like I love a lot of the people that went for it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you were. I'm a firm believer in what's meant for you will be. I think not even. I think I know you were meant to be in this role because of the challenges that had to be faced. It needed someone like you to be able to stand firm behind the scenes. So no, I'm happy. I'm happy you were in it.
Thank you. Yeah, but it was like
So
Tupac, Wesley Snipes, Marlon Wayans, of course, was I think was definitely for my part because I always ended up being up for things and him being up for things that I was up for and so forth.
yeah,
And a lot of people, man.
yeah. There's a couple other ones that came up. Go ahead.
Jeffrey Wright was up for my role. A lot of people.
I think Eddie Murphy in that as well.
He could have had it if he wanted it, of course, but he was definitely being considered. Yes, definitely. Yeah.
And Eddie Murphy was up for, was it your role?
I don't know which role, but he probably could have
Okay.
had any role he wanted.
I think okay, another one was Denzel. Was Denzel, did he audition or was he supposed to be in the movie? Do you know any,
I don't
or
I
he
don't know
declined
about
it?
Denzel.
Okay. All right, last one. Last is it true or not? So it is said that the real Jamaican bobsled team, they didn't take any issue with the story. Is that true? And were you ever able to meet any of them? And what were, if you were, what were some of those conversations, if so?
Yes, I was able to meet with a couple of them, and no, they took no issue. They understood, that it was a movie. These very highly intelligent men, they were, proud that essentially the story is intact in terms of the fact that it's an inspirational story, and uh, one of the gentlemen is an inspirational speaker to this day, and I've seen him on the road. He's going in one direction, I'm going in the other. He's speaking, I'm trying to do a legend comedy, like so yeah. They're all very extremely proud men, and they've lived to see, the fruits of their efforts, and yeah, so yeah, I've engaged with them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear too. And even because I was, not to date me, but I was born the year,
Oh, wow.
I was born the year that this movie was released. But even like, but again, this is why it's so important to the culture because, again, like I said, I ran track and just understanding what the story means and what it represents, and then knowing that it's actually attached to a real story. I do think it's so important. And for me, again, I am a little offended that it's not being celebrated because it should be. You all deserve your flowers. And I know we talked about the reasons of why we feel like it hasn't been supported, but personally for you, how do you personally feel? Do you feel disrespected, or what do you feel in this, you know, I guess the atmosphere that it has created because you guys aren't, being pushed the way you should be pushed?
I don't feel disrespected at all. I actually find it hard to believe that it's not being celebrated. It's being celebrated in the culture, which is where it matters. It's kind of like when I used, I was a pretty big star, and I had like movie. I was above the title, and I had all this stuff going on, and this. I had a television show, Bill Cosby. I had my own television show, Hee Hee Ha, and I'd come home and be like, "Ma, I got a television show," and she was like, yeah, that's good. And I was like, yeah, but I'm working with blah blah blah. She was like, that's nice. And I was like, yeah. And I also went to a school, and the kids gave me a picture, and she was like, those are the rewards that count.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always been in that space of, when you're engaging people and they're telling you these wonderful things like you are telling me, thank you, that's what matters, and that's the celebration I desire. I don't desire a celebration, a publicity tour from a studio that is like 60 people who are paid to like you. I've been through that routine, and I enjoy the genuine feelings that I have from people all over the world for the last 30 years. It's been quite a delight. And so those are the flowers. I love them, and I accept them. But yeah, we'll
Yeah.
stage a couple events here and there, and that'll be cool. But thank you. You're the flowers I was looking for, Symphony.
Hey, I appreciate it. Like I said, I'm honored to be able to sit and talk to you and have you, on our platform, but just outside of the platform, just personally being able to meet you and connect with you and hear more about your story. Because again, it is encouraging to know what was going on behind the scenes as far as how you all were able to come together and stick together, and then knowing that it's a beautiful story like the Cool Runnings. So from me, from Comedy Hype, happy 30 years to you and the cast. I'm so excited for what's to come. As we close out, I like to always ask, what do you have coming up? How can people keep up contact? You're so off grid. I don't even know if you like people keeping up.
I love people, but I, I'm 50 something years old, so it's like I'm
Yeah.
tired. Thank you. Um, I I have directed and produced and starred in a film that I did call In the Weeds, and so that's coming, and I'm very proud of it. It's just finishing its festival circuit run, and I've gotten like two Best Actor awards, and it's gotten some Best Picture awards, and so I'm very proud of it. It's a pandemic comedy, but it's also with dramatic undertone or whatever. So I'm really proud of it, and it's on its way. So never fear. Off the grid today, on the grid tomorrow. Comedy hype.
I look forward to it. Again, thank you so much for joining me, Dougie Doug. For our audience, hey, I'm gonna normally ask you a question, but I'm just gonna say, put your favorite thing that you loved about Cool Runnings in the comments below. Again, thank you, Dougie Doug, for joining me. And for Comedy Hype News, I'm Symphony Thompson.